He was one of the richest men in America, a tech visionary who built an empire from a college dorm. But behind the gates of his $40 million estate in Austin, Texas, Jonathan Reed's greatest treasure wasn't his wealth. It was his daughter, Emily, a quiet, brilliant 10-year-old with autism who saw the world in colors no one else could. The sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Willow Creek mansion, casting golden light across the marble floors. Jonathan stood in the kitchen, stirring Emily's favorite oatmeal, cinnamon, no sugar, just the way she liked it. She sat at the breakfast nook, humming softly, her fingers tracing patterns on the table. It had been 3 years since Jonathan lost his first wife to cancer. Emily had been only 7. The grief nearly broke him, but Emily gave him a reason to keep going. She didn't speak, but her presence filled every room with meaning. Then came Samantha. They met at a charity gala in New York. She was elegant, articulate, and seemed to adore Emily. For the first time in years, Jonathan allowed himself to hope again. They married after a whirlwind romance. At first, everything seemed perfect, but lately something felt off. Emily had become more withdrawn. She flinched at sudden movements. Her humming had turned to silence. And Samantha, once warm and attentive, had grown distant, irritable, cold. Jonathan chalked it up to stress. Adjusting to a new family dynamic wasn't easy. But deep down, something gnawed at him. And on that quiet Tuesday morning, as he kissed Emily's forehead and watched Samantha walk past without a word, he had no idea that the truth was about to shatter everything he thought he knew. The Reed estate was a fortress of luxury, manicured lawns, smart security systems, and a private art gallery tucked behind the wine cellar. But inside, something fragile was beginning to crack. Jonathan sat in his home office, reviewing quarterly reports from his AI startup. His mind should have been on investors and product launches, but it kept drifting to Emily. She hadn't touched her puzzles in days. Her favorite Mozart playlist sat untouched on her tablet. And yesterday, she'd refused to eat. Samantha breezed in, dressed in a silk blouse and heels, her phone glued to her ear. "Yes, I'll be at the fundraiser by 6, she said, barely glancing at Jonathan. "Tell them I'll bring the check." Jonathan watched her. She was always moving, always performing. But lately, her warmth had cooled. She no longer asked about Emily's therapy sessions. She skipped bedtime stories. And when Emily reached for her hand last week, Samantha had pulled away. Later that afternoon, Dr. Rachel Monroe arrived for Emily's weekly session. She was greeted by Nina, the housekeeper, who whispered, "Emily's been quiet. More than usual." Rachel nodded, concerned. In the therapy room, Emily sat curled in the corner, her eyes darting toward the door every few seconds. Rachel tried her usual techniques, sensory cards, soft music, even the weighted blanket. Nothing worked. "Emily," she said gently, "can you show me how you're feeling?" Emily picked up a red card, the one that meant scared. Rachel's heart sank. After the session, Rachel pulled Jonathan aside. "Something's wrong. She's regressing. And she's afraid." Jonathan frowned. "Afraid of what?" Rachel hesitated. "I don't know yet, but I think you need to start asking questions." Jonathan nodded slowly, and for the first time, he felt the chill of doubt creeping into his perfect world. The Reed mansion was quiet that Thursday afternoon. Jonathan was at a board meeting downtown, and Emily had just finished her therapy session. Samantha was home, but rarely present. She spent most of her time in her private lounge, sipping wine and scrolling through her phone. Nina moved through the house with practiced grace. She'd worked for the Reeds since Emily was born. She knew every creak in the floorboards, every rhythm of the household. And she knew Emily, her routines, her moods, her silent language. That day, something felt off. Emily had retreated to her playroom, a sunlit space filled with puzzles, plush toys, and sensory mats. Nina passed by the door and paused. She heard a sound, not crying, not humming, but a soft whimper. She peeked in. Emily was sitting on the floor, clutching her arm. Her skin was red, not just flushed, irritated. Nina stepped closer. "Sweetheart," she whispered, kneeling down. "Did you hurt yourself?" Emily didn't respond. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway. Nina followed her gaze. Samantha stood at the doorway, arms crossed, eyes cold. "She spilled tea on herself," she said flatly. Clumsy as usual. Nina's stomach turned. Something in Samantha's tone, dismissive, sharp, almost cruel, didn't sit right. Later, As Nina folded laundry in the guest wing, she found a damp towel in Samantha's bathroom. It smelled faintly of chamomile and something else. Burnt skin. She stared at it for a long time. That evening, Jonathan returned. Emily was quiet, withdrawn. Samantha was radiant, laughing over dinner with a glass of wine. Nina said nothing, but she made a decision. She would start documenting everything. Dates, times, incidents. Because something was happening in that house, something no one wanted to see. Dr. Rachel Monroe sat in her car outside the Reed estate, her fingers drumming the steering wheel. She'd been Emily's therapist for nearly 2 years. She knew her rhythms, her fears, her silent language. And lately, something wasn't right. Inside, Jonathan paced the living room, his mind tangled in knots. He'd replayed Nina's quiet concern, Emily's red card, and Samantha's cold dismissal. It didn't add up, or maybe it did, and he just didn't want to see it. Rachel entered, her face serious. "Jonathan, I need to speak with you privately." They moved to his study. The door closed. The air shifted. "I've seen signs," Rachel said. "Emily's regression isn't random. She's showing trauma responses, flinching, withdrawal, fear of touch. And her burns, they weren't accidental." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "You think Samantha?" "I don't know," Rachel said carefully. "But someone in this house is hurting her. And it's not self-inflicted." Jonathan sat down slowly. His world, once so controlled, so precise, was unraveling. "I trusted her," he whispered. "I thought she loved Emily." Rachel leaned forward. "You need to act. Quietly. Carefully. But soon." That night, Jonathan watched Samantha from across the dinner table. She laughed at a text, sipped her wine, and complimented the chef. Emily sat beside him, silent, her eyes never lifting from her plate. After dinner, Jonathan tucked Emily into bed. She clung to his shirt, her fingers trembling. "Daddy's here," he whispered. "You're safe." But he wasn't sure that was true anymore. Downstairs, Samantha poured another drink. Her phone buzzed. She smiled. And upstairs, Jonathan opened his laptop and began searching. Child trauma signs, legal guardianship, hidden abuse. Because if Rachel was right, if Samantha had crossed that line, then Jonathan would burn down everything to protect his daughter. Jonathan couldn't sleep. He sat in his study long after midnight, staring at the security dashboard on his laptop. The Reed estate had 42 cameras, every hallway, every entrance, every exterior angle. But none inside the bedrooms. None in Emily's playroom. He clicked through footage from the past week. Samantha appeared often, always poised, always polished. But something felt rehearsed. He needed more. The next morning, Jonathan called Marcus Hale, his longtime friend and legal advisor. "I need to install a camera," he said quietly. Discreet. "In Emily's room." Marcus didn't ask why. He simply nodded. "I'll have it done by tonight." Meanwhile, Nina was cleaning Samantha's lounge when she noticed something odd. A small, scorched mark on the edge of the marble countertop. She leaned closer. It smelled faintly of burnt fabric. She opened the cabinet beneath the sink. Inside, tucked behind cleaning supplies, was a plastic bag. Inside the bag, a child's shirt. Emily's. The sleeve was singed. The fabric stiff. Nina's hands trembled. She took a photo with her phone and placed the shirt back exactly as she found it. That evening, Jonathan returned home early. Marcus had installed the camera, hidden inside a decorative owl figurine on Emily's bookshelf. It would record silently, triggered by motion. Jonathan kissed Emily goodnight and sat in the hallway, watching the feed on his phone. At 9:42 p.m., Samantha entered the room. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. She walked to Emily's bed, pulled the blanket roughly, and whispered something. Low, sharp, threatening. Emily flinched. Jonathan's blood ran cold. He saved the footage. Tomorrow, he would confront her. But tonight, he sat in the dark, watching the woman he married become someone he didn't recognize. And Emily, his sweet, silent daughter, was still in danger. Jonathan waited until Emily was safely at her therapy session with Dr. Rachel. The house was quiet, the air heavy. Samantha was in the solarium, sipping her usual midday cocktail, scrolling through her phone. He walked in, holding his tablet. No words, just the video. Samantha looked up, her smile fading as she saw herself on screen, entering Emily's room, yanking the blanket, whispering threats. She blinked. "Where did you get that?" Jonathan's voice was low, controlled. "I installed a camera. I had to." You left me no choice. Samantha stood, her face hardening. You invaded my privacy. You terrorized my daughter, he snapped. You lied to me. You hurt her. She scoffed. She's difficult. You don't understand what it's like living with her. She screams. She throws things. She's a child, Jonathan said, stepping closer. My child. And you don't get to hurt her because you're overwhelmed. Samantha's eyes narrowed. You think you're some hero? You married me because you couldn't handle being alone. You needed someone to play mother while you buried yourself in work. Jonathan's hands trembled. I trusted you. I let you into our lives. And you betrayed us. She turned away, grabbing her purse. You want me gone? Fine. But don't expect me to leave quietly. Jonathan didn't flinch. You'll leave tonight. And if you ever come near Emily again, I'll make sure you never see the inside of another gala, another boardroom, another camera lens. Samantha paused at the door. You'll regret this. Jonathan stared at her. I already do. She left. And as the door slammed shut, Jonathan collapsed into the nearest chair, the weight of betrayal pressing down. Emily deserved peace. And now, he would fight for it, no matter the cost. The next morning, Jonathan sat across from Marcus Hale in his downtown office. The footage had been reviewed, the evidence cataloged. Marcus leaned forward, his voice low. We need to file for emergency protective custody. And we're reporting this to Child Protective Services today. Jonathan nodded, his jaw clenched. I want her charged. I want her nowhere near Emily again. Marcus picked up the phone and made the call. By noon, Detective Carla Jennings arrived at the Reed estate. A seasoned child protection officer with 20 years on the force, she carried herself with quiet authority. She reviewed the footage, the photos Nina had taken, and Emily's medical records. This is serious, she said. We'll need to interview Samantha. And I want to speak with Emily. Gently, through her therapist. Jonathan agreed. Rachel Monroe was already preparing Emily for the session. Meanwhile, Samantha had gone silent. Her social media accounts were deactivated. Her lawyer sent a terse email. My client denies all allegations. Detective Jennings wasn't fazed. Denial is common. But the footage doesn't lie. That evening, Jonathan sat beside Emily in her playroom. She was slowly returning to her puzzles, her fingers moving with cautious rhythm. She looked up at him and placed a blue card in his hand. Safe. He smiled, tears stinging his eyes. Downstairs, Detective Jennings spoke with Nina. The housekeeper recounted everything. The scorched shirt, the cold remarks, the bruises she'd noticed but hadn't dared to question. Jennings took notes. You did the right thing. This will help us build the case. Jonathan watched from the stairs. The battle had begun. It wouldn't be easy. Samantha had money, lawyers, and a public image to protect. But he had something stronger, the truth, and a daughter worth fighting for. The story broke on a Thursday morning. Austin Billionaire's wife accused of child abuse. The headline blazed across news sites, social media feeds, and morning talk shows. The footage had leaked. Not by Jonathan, but someone in the legal system. Maybe a clerk. Maybe a reporter tipped off by Nina. Within hours, Samantha's name was trending. Her face, once the darling of charity galas and fashion campaigns, was plastered across every screen. The video played on loop. Her entering Emily's room. Her cold whisper, Emily's flinch. Jonathan watched it unfold from his office, his phone vibrating nonstop. Investors were nervous. PR teams scrambled. But he didn't care about optics. He cared about Emily. Samantha's lawyer released a statement. My client denies all allegations and will fight these defamatory claims. But the damage was done. Detective Jennings dug deeper. She uncovered sealed records from Samantha's past, a restraining order filed by a former nanny, dismissed quietly, a lawsuit from a former assistant, settled out of court. Patterns. Red flags. Rachel Monroe met with Emily again. This time, Emily chose a green card. Calm. Progress. Healing. Meanwhile, Nina received a message from an anonymous account. Thank you for protecting her. You did the right thing. Jonathan sat with Marcus in the study. She's going to spin this, he said. Play the victim. Blame stress. Say Emily's condition overwhelmed her. Marcus nodded. Let her try? We have the truth. Outside, reporters gathered at the gates. Helicopters hovered. The world was watching. And inside, Emily played her Mozart playlist again. Soft, steady, familiar. Jonathan closed his laptop and walked to her room. He sat beside her, listening. The storm was raging outside. But in that moment, inside those walls, peace was beginning to return. The courtroom was quiet, sterile, and tense. Jonathan sat beside Marcus, his eyes fixed on the judge. Samantha was across the aisle, dressed in black, her expression carefully composed. Her legal team had filed a motion, claiming emotional distress, defamation, and demanding joint custody of Emily. It was a final move, a desperate one. Detective Jennings had submitted her report. Rachel Monroe had testified. Nina's photos were entered into evidence. And the footage, the damning footage, played again for the court. Samantha didn't flinch. Outside, reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. Inside, Jonathan's heart pounded. Emily wasn't there. She was safe at home, surrounded by therapists and security. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Reed, do you deny the events shown in this footage?" Samantha's voice was calm. "I was under extreme stress. I never intended harm. Emily's condition is difficult. I did my best." Jonathan stood. "Your best was abuse. Your best left my daughter burned, terrified, and silent." The judge nodded. "Motion denied. Full custody remains with Mr. Reed. Mrs. Reed is barred from contact pending further investigation." Samantha's mask cracked. As she exited the courtroom, she turned to Jonathan. "You think you've won? You've ruined me." Jonathan didn't respond. He didn't need to. That evening, Samantha posted a cryptic message online. "Truth is subjective. Power is temporary." It went viral. Her followers split, some defending, others condemning. Jonathan sat beside Emily in her playroom. She was humming again. Her fingers danced across puzzle pieces. She looked up and smiled, a rare, radiant smile. He kissed her forehead. "You're safe now." Outside, the world debated. Inside, healing had begun. And Jonathan knew, no matter how powerful Samantha had once been, she would never touch his daughter again. 3 months had passed. The media storm had faded. Samantha's name had disappeared from headlines, replaced by newer scandals and fresher gossip. Her lawsuit was dismissed. Her reputation, once polished and pristine, was in ruins. Jonathan Reed had stepped away from the spotlight. He resigned from 2 boards, scaled back his company's public appearances, and focused on one thing: Emily. Their days were quieter now. Mornings began with oatmeal and puzzles. Afternoons were filled with therapy, music, and walks through the garden. Emily had started humming again, not just Mozart, but her own melodies. She even laughed once. A soft, breathy giggle that made Jonathan cry. Dr. Rachel Monroe continued her sessions, noting steady progress. "She's healing," she said, "because she feels safe." Nina remained at the house, now more than a housekeeper, a guardian, a friend. She and Emily had developed a silent language of gestures and smiles. One evening, Jonathan sat with Marcus on the patio, watching the sunset over the Texas hills. "You did the right thing," Marcus said. "You protected her. You gave her a voice." Jonathan nodded. "I just wish I'd seen it sooner." Marcus placed a hand on his shoulder. "You saw it when it mattered." Inside, Emily was drawing. A picture of her and Jonathan holding hands beneath a bright yellow sun. She handed it to him with a shy smile. He framed it. That night, as Emily slept peacefully, Jonathan stood by her door, watching her breathe. The house was quiet. The air was still. And for the first time in years, he felt peace. Not the kind that comes from wealth or power, but the kind that comes from love, protection, and the unbreakable bond between a father and his daughter.